my beer breathes so the head doesn't go out of control.
That's going to be a soundbite, I think.
For one thing, you've got this bad prognosis, and then you've got people saying that they're praying for you, but it's maybe delivered a little more solemn way, and it makes it seem like, oh, I must be really bad off.
Dozens or maybe thousands of people praying for you, right? Like, are you as motivated as somebody who thinks, like you're all you've got?
They actually found that there was actually some detriment when people found out that they had strangers praying for them, because it built in this kind of feeling of like, ooh, this must be really bad.
They tell you little white lies or something like that just to make you feel better. Maybe that's okay, because hell, you're dying.
There is like no hope. Like you're definitely going to die. Welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Casey Rochford, and we'd love it if you'd like and share the video and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, and I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and don't forget that we write our own music, and there's going to be something new that we've written at the end of this episode. So stick around to the end so you can check that out. And if you like it, you can pick up our music and places like iTunes and Spotify and such locations, never mind. I was going to go down to the 90s internet path, but yeah. So anyway, speaking of the internet, if you want to dive deeper or have other conversations or check out more of our information, you can go to ksmvidcast.com and check out our website.
Our latest album just came out on Spotify too, so go check that out.
Yeah, definitely check it out, purchase it. We definitely like that. I mean, we pay more than we make to run this channel, so just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, so Casey, I have no idea what we're going to talk about today. It sounds like this is going to be a little bit of an extended lightning round episode. Not an actual lightning round, but kind of akin to a lightning round where we don't know what we're going to bring up.
Lately we've been kind of riffing off the stuff without the other person knowing, and it's been going pretty well. And
yeah, it's actually kind of fun. I mean,
really it's just born out of not having enough time to plan the show.
Yeah. Well, and as long as it's a topic that you don't have to like do research or anything like that, that's more like a philosophical thing or something, it seems to work out pretty well. So what do you want to talk about today?
Well, I'm drinking a Rochefort beer, and I thought, I recently found out that my mom has cancer, and there's going to be an emergency surgery in a couple days here. Don't know how that's going to go. And she's a devout Catholic, and I'm an atheist, so I thought it would be kind of an interesting time to go into the topic of whether or not prayer helps or hurts.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. And we should probably discuss also like whether as an atheist you should maybe, for the sake of a loved one, pray with them or something if it makes them feel better.
Yeah, or vice versa. Like, is it rude to say to an atheist that is an atheist, like, hey, I'm praying for you or whatever?
Yeah, I'd like to. We definitely have to talk about that, because I have my own feelings, and I'm sure you do too. I think however you feel, if you're, an atheist, you've got your own views, or if you're deeply religious, you've got others. But I think what it comes down to, as far as a scientific thing, is at least at a bare minimum, the placebo effect, that a person's mood or motivation, or your drive to see it through or stick it out, that kind of thing, is really important. So however you achieve that, I think, could be pretty valuable, even if it's ephemeral, I guess, like, something that may or may not actually have a real impact in a cosmic way. um, I think I think prayer could have a benefit from a scientific standpoint, like just a completely objective, like, standpoint. I think there's some merit there. Some. I
Yeah.
don't know that you're going to get like miracles where suddenly you're cured or something, but I think that the positive effect of a whole bunch of people, you going through something really tough and knowing you've got a bunch of people around you who support you, and then at that point it kind of becomes like a fight to, for them too, like, oh,
Oh
all
yeah.
these people are counting on me, I got to make it through this.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. I think there's kind of this gradient where it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, it's a good thing. Um, what you're talking about is, like, positive affirmations in general. I mean, just today I had a coworker, just go out of her way to tell me I'm doing a good job, and that enough was, that was enough to like lift my spirits when I'm feeling like, am I doing all right? Like
Yeah, it's
it,
a motivational kind of thing. Yeah.
right. Yeah. When
Which,
you got people pulling for you, it kind of gives you that little extra boost of
well,
motivation.
sure, and I think that is really important when you're going through something like that. That
Mhm.
if you just give up, I don't think there's any hope of ever getting through it, because
Right.
it is a struggle. It's something you have to actively work at.
Now,
Um,
now, where it differs though is it's not just a positive affirmation. There's this implication that there's a higher power pulling the strings for you. And so,
well, if that's the
while
case, why is there cancer? Oh, we never. I
we're
should.
going to get to that.
Okay.
Um, but with that being the case, it's like it's sort of similar to a positive affirmation in your everyday struggles or whatever. And
Mhm.
when you're talking about somebody who's sick, or somebody who's like, let's say, uh, terminally ill, and the doctors are saying, hey, it's not looking good, outlook's bad or whatever. um, and luckily I don't think this is the case with my mom.
Well, that's good.
But in that situation, telling somebody that you're praying for them can almost take on uh, a, a damaging effect to it, because for one thing, you've got this bad prognosis, and then you've got people saying that they're praying for you, but it's maybe delivered a little more solemn way, and it makes it seem like, oh, I must be really bad off because people are praying for me. And
And actually, yeah, you bring up a really good point there, that what if you are so strong in your faith or whatever, and you feel like there's dozens or maybe thousands of people praying for you, right? Like, are you as motivated as somebody who thinks, like, you're all you've got, right?
yeah,
So would you maybe just like give up and give in, right? Oh, let God sort it out. We'll sort it out in the dub, right? Like,
yeah,
maybe that might actually be counterproductive in some situations.
yeah.
Although I do think that, like, a person's attitude, like how you feel about things, I think that does affect certain situations. Not all of them, but definitely, like, there's a difference between being positive about things and hopeful and stuff, and you know, that kind of thing, compared to being completely dejected and feeling like, oh yeah, there's no hope. I think the outcome is going to be very different depending on what you're afflicted with.
Right. Yeah. And so I talk about it in my book. In one of the chapters, there was a study done. I'll have to try to look it up and put it in the description or something. But they basically did sort of a study like that, where they would tell a terminally ill patient, there are, 1,000 strangers praying for you. And then they would also not tell a terminal patient that they had 1,000 people praying for them, though they actually did. So like a blind study, right?
Yeah. Proper science. Yeah.
Yeah. So they actually found that, with the proper controls and stuff as well, they actually found that there was actually some detriment when people found out that they had strangers praying for them, because it built in this kind of feeling of like, ooh, this must be really bad. People who don't even know me throwing prayers my way.
Well, and yeah, that and also the idea that like you're already taken care of, so you don't have to actually do anything. I think is another factor that into play there. That
The complacency,
yeah, like oh man,
But then
there's a lot of angles here that.
But then I think it goes back over the fence again if it's like there is like no hope. Like you're definitely going to die, but you're devout, you're religious, and you get comfort from that. And you're aware you're going to die. You're totally aware that, God's not even going to step in for you. Like it's just bad.
Mm-hmm.
In those situations, being an atheist, for a close friend of mine that died of cancer a few years ago, I went and asked people to pray for him, even though that's not my bag. I was like, you know what, this is his thing. He knows he's dying. I know he's dying. Everyone knows he's dying. If it makes him feel better, I'm all for it,
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. That well, and we're all gonna die. So do you want to die feeling relaxed about it, like maybe your life had meaning, or there's meaning after life or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I honestly don't have a problem with it. I guess to within a certain certain framework, I guess.
I like to remain realistic, and I think it's healthy to stay grounded in reality to an extent. It's fine to be hopeful, but you also have to like recognize things that are facts versus faith and stuff like that,
Yeah, but as the person who's dying, maybe it's okay. Like if you're deceived a little bit, or if you're just, people give you, they whisper sweet nothings, they tell you little white lies or something like that just to make you feel better. Maybe that's okay, because hell, you're dying, right? Like I don't really have a problem with that.
Yeah. So you kind of alluded to something, the whole dichotomy of, well, why is there cancer if, God's all healing and stuff? Like, why have it there in the first place? There's so many things about that just swim around in my head. It's like, what is the point of prayer? Because I mean, like, going from the Judeo-Christian angle, of course, the whole premise is that you have this omniscient God, right?
Yeah.
Perfect, all-knowing, has a plan, right? perfect all-knowing, has a plan. What's a prayer? You're asking God to change his plan. Okay, so right there, you're assuming God's too dumb to know what he wants.
Or you're assuming that God isn't aware that this is happening, and it requires some kind of human, like the more humans that ask for something, the
Yeah,
more likely it's going to be that it's going to happen. It's like, what God should know that this is happening. There's some suffering here.
yeah. Like no
Fix it.
matter what, there's a part of the trifecta that has to give way there, because it's also like, well, did he give us free will, or does he have a plan? Because those don't really jive when you think of it.
And a lot of people would argue, I'm not beating up on people that are religious here, but um, if hang on, I gotta have some more beer here. I'm losing my train of thought. It so oh shit. Okay, wait. I gotta regroup in my head. There's too many things going on here.
It can be hard to follow
Yeah,
circular logic. So
true. So if you have any other ideas, go ahead and let them out, and I'll come back to what I was thinking about, because I'm kind of I've got mixed up there.
I mean, like I was saying, it's like if you're praying for God's plan to change or whatever, what what makes you think that that would be a good idea, or that it would be granted? Because like that would throw everything out of whack, and then the whole perfection thing falls off the table too.
Well,
So it's like,
yeah, and that's the thing, is like a lot of people. This is something I was going to bring up. A lot of people say like, oh, why is there cancer and suffering and things like that? And it's like, oh, well, it's part of God's plan, right? You have to endure these things for a reason, for some kind of growth or something like that. So, okay, sure, fine. All right, I'll give you that. So why ask for there to be some kind of deviation from that plan, for your own selfish means? And do you think that God is okay with that? Or, and if he is, then he's kind of a dick, for inflicting all this suffering on people. And then like, only when you actually ask do things change.
yeah. And if there is a being that does have a plan, are your prayers actually being heard, or is it just coincidence when you think a prayer is answered, but maybe that was the plan the whole time? Like,
oh man, Inception. We're going deep here. Now that's good. That's
I
a
mean,
good
it's
point.
stuff that I think about all the time. Like, even as an atheist, I always think about. I mean, I was raised religious, so I know the mindset, and I know that the rationale that's been used by most people. So because I've used it before myself as a child, and I always like to think about that in a pedagogical sense, like why do we think that way? Like what drives us to think that way? What purpose? Like, is that a detriment, or is that a benefit?
Hmm.
uh
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, and I feel like some of these things are a little bit like logically fallacious, like moving the goalposts and stuff,
yeah,
and such things. Like, I don't know.
because I
But
mean,
here's the thing. At the end of the day, somebody's dying, and if they die peacefully and don't freak out, um, I guess that's a good thing.
yeah.
Um,
Well, then I also kind of want to go into the pessimist versus optimist angle a little bit,
of course.
and take a more secular approach to this. It's like I feel like being realistic is often seen as pessimistic, but um, you know, understanding and embracing the reality of your situation and not giving yourself false hope. I mean, I guess it's subjective, but I see
Hmm.
that as being like better than you know, because like I would rather be pleasantly surprised than horribly surprised. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, or
I'd rather expect,
disappointed basically
yeah,
at
I'd rather prepare for the worst and you know, expect something good, you know, like hope for something good or whatever, but you know, just
yeah.
ready for it to go south rather than just depending on it and being like, you know, in the case of prayer, being like, well, I'm praying, I have faith that everything's going to be okay, and then it falls to shit, and you're like, oof, you feel extra bad then, right? You know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think like the vast majority of situations like that end that way. But there's a few outliers, like what we would call miracles,
Right.
that get highlighted, and everybody points to that, like, oh, there's this miracle. It's like, okay, but how about the like 100,000 other dead people that didn't get miraculously resurrected on the brink of death or something? You
Yeah.
know, yeah, I think it's important to be realistic about it. I mean, maybe if you're gonna die, like you might as well die a fool, um, a happy fool. I like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know. So I was thinking about this. Do you think? Because you know, okay, so I'm an atheist too, but I'm more like I lean more a little bit more towards the um, spiritual kind of side of things. Like I think there's a thing like the force or something out there. You know, a little agnosticism. Um, so I feel like maybe there's something to some of these things, like mystical stuff and woo things. Um, do you think prayer is effective irrespective of God? Like, it doesn't matter if you're praying to a God. It's the fact that a bunch of people are focusing their energy, their attention on something, um, you know, putting their souls into this, and they're caring.
Well,
Maybe
yeah.
that could affect change on its own without God.
Right. Well, like what we started talking about, where, you know, just like a positive affirmation makes you feel better, gives you a little more motivation. You
Mm-hmm.
know, my spiritual atheism kind of leans toward you having the power within, just kind of like mostly untapped
Yeah.
until you know you hit the right stride or you get the right stimulus that you know requires you to dig deeper and do something that you normally wouldn't be able to achieve or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
you know, like I think I talk about that in my book as well, and
Yeah.
possibly in the chapter on perseverance, where you know basically it's like, uh, you know, you're faced with two choices basically. Like I can give up and roll over and die, or I can just be like, well, there's only one way through this, and that's straight through. So you know, you
Yeah.
just put up with whatever you got to put up with, get through it, and that's certainly not without its battle scars, of course. But
Hmm.
you know, I yeah, I do think there's like more power. I don't know that it's necessarily ethereal or you know, I don't want to say extraterrestrial. I'm looking for a different word. Yeah, extra you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's outside of you. It's just you know, yeah, I can be on board with that kind of philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, man. Wow. This is already pretty good. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't want anyone to take this in bad taste, you know, knowing that my mom is religious and stuff. And then we're sitting here debating about whether or not prayer is a good thing.
well, and, and
um,
and that's the whole point. Like I would pray. You know, my mom died of cancer in 2011,
yeah, fuck
and
cancer.
yeah, and if she asked to, you know, for let's sit down and pray together, I totally would. Like,
Yeah,
you know what, I don't I have no magic bullet that I can solve this, Okay, well, why not just pray? And if the worst thing that happens is she feels better, then I'm okay with that. Like I don't share the same religious philosophy or doctrine or anything like that, but it doesn't matter. It's the kind of thing like you're connecting with somebody and sharing cultures or something like that. Just kind of aligning with a person for a while to help them through something. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, just because I think differently doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Especially if somebody's dying, right?
No, I get that. Like when it comes to something cultural, I'm definitely cool with that. I mean, I've gone to a Sikh temple and participated in all that stuff, and as an atheist, and none of that bothered me. But maybe it's just because I was like raised in it and didn't really have the greatest experience. But I've always, as far back as I can remember, I've always felt a little uncomfortable with prayer. And now that we're talking about this, I just realized, that like it didn't even occur to me that it probably would have made my mom feel better if I said, I'm praying for you, which I didn't. But in my own way, I was trying to explain to her, just from my experience and my education, like, hey, this is going to be okay. This is a routine surgery. It's done all the time. It's non-vital organs. It's probably going to be a little chemo, but just like my first cancer, when I had a surgery, they did a little bit of light chemo, never even threw up, didn't lose much hair at all. And she said that made her feel better. So, we were able to connect in a compromising way. Like, I didn't have to get religious. She didn't have to like hear me bash religion. It was more like I said something that was comforting, and it was received that way, successfully.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of a big step, because my mom, when she found out I was an atheist, didn't really take it that well and kind of tried to push religion on me extra hard for a while there. But
you've eschewed this doctrine because of how forceful it's pushed on people. I'm going to push it more on you, in the hopes that you're going to change.
And my grandmother passed away early this year, and she was also very religious, but she and I like always kind of had an understanding that we just enjoyed arguing about it. Like, when she was on her deathbed and her blood pressure was really, really low, I walked in and I said, hey, if you want, I can argue with you about religion and bring your blood pressure up. And she just laughed. Like,
oh, nice. Yeah, that's good. And
that's another thing. Humor is way better at healing than almost anything, I think.
Oh, totally. Like, surgeons and nurses and doctors and stuff, like, they joke around all the time. Cops, because they're around death all the time. And but yeah, I think that is a huge component in healing or addressing difficult situations. One thing that like bugs me about prayer is it does feel a little bit like begging. Like, God, this super awesome being that like loving, cares about everybody, he'll let you die unless you beg for forgiveness or some kind of healing or something like that. Like, okay, look, if I could just snap my fingers and everybody's healed and nobody's sick and nobody suffers, I would totally do it. So, and I'm a dumbass. So as like a dumbass, why am I inclined to do that? But this omnipotent, omniscient God doesn't.
Hmm. Okay, so what if, let's say there is a God,
All right.
and let's say the universe also operates on like some kind of karma principle.
Mhm.
So God can heal people, but it requires making another person ill.
Ooh.
But
Oh man.
if that were the case, don't you think we would not have a saying only the good die young? You know what I mean? Like, don't you think God would be like, "Oh, you're a dick. You're getting cancer." You know, like,
Yeah, exactly.
just
Which
make all the bad people sick, right?
and you know, as observation bears out, the opposite is true. Like the
Yeah.
dicks live to like 90 or 100 or something like that, and then the
Yep.
good people, yeah, good people die young.
Yeah.
Oh man, wow,
Yeah.
that.
So, like, well, I'm reading Mary Trump's book right now,
Hmm.
and Trump's oldest brother was like actually a really nice guy, and he died like when he was 42. And here we're stuck with Trump, you know, in his 70s, getting a dick.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
That's it right there for
that's
you, folks.
politics for
Yeah,
you, you know.
God and politics.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Death and taxes. Um, wait, it's almost kind of like. Never mind. Oh, yeah. Oh,
So yeah, I mean, what do you think though about um, the idea of praying for an atheist?
I, I think if somebody prayed for me, um, you know, I'm like dying. So okay, I plan to die in some kind of like epic way, like my boat sinks or a fiery explosion of a jet or something. I'm not going to die in a bed with a bunch of people like crying around me. Um, but if I did, and there were a bunch of people saying, "Hey, we're going to pray to try to fix this," I would appreciate it. Like you know, because it's context. It's like
Mm.
this is a big deal to these people. They see their religion as the solution to things, and I don't care if you're Christian or Muslim or you know Sikh or whatever. If you're praying for me, I'm gonna be like, thanks, that's
Yeah,
awesome. You know, and that's the thing. Like in the reverse, like it doesn't matter who's praying for you if you're religious. You know, if you believe there's one God, there's one God, no matter the perceived interpretive form that that God takes. So
yeah,
anybody, if you're Christian and a Muslim's praying for you, you should be thankful. um
right. Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing. I also see this as a gradient, not really black and white. Um, like what you're talking about is fine. It's like if somebody just tells me, "Hey, I'm praying for you," like keeping you in my thoughts. What you know, like you can translate it to whatever. Um, I mean, it's really no different than if somebody walked up to me and said, "Hey, you know, sometimes I imagine you naked." Like it doesn't hurt me or anything. Like you know, it's not damaging to me in any way, and it might be a little weird, but
Depending, it could be flattering in other
exactly, yeah,
situations. Yeah.
depends. Yeah, it depends. So you know, but you know, like for the most part, I usually take it in stride, like, hey, and especially if it's people praying for my mom or whatever, you know, like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, I'll pass that on, you know, like I know she'll enjoy that. And to some extent, I think it makes that person feel better. It makes them feel like they're contributing in some way, even
Hmm.
though I mean, like a thought really isn't heavy lifting in any way, but you know, that's okay. Um,
Well, I mean, you know, for some people it might be. They might be like praying like hard.
yeah.
I don't know how
Well,
you do that,
see,
but you know, they
yeah,
might be.
well, I'm going to tell you how they do that because
Mhm.
that's the part that does make me feel super uncomfortable.
Hmm.
I've I've had so my friend that died of cancer a few years ago. Shortly before he died, um, I went to his church for some reason. I can't remember what the occasion was, and I'm like years removed from cancer, right? Like almost a decade at that point, and he's dying of cancer, and he gets his friends, and they all hold hands and form a circle around me and audibly pray for me. And I'm like,
What?
I'm feeling really uncomfortable here. Like it's almost cult-like at that point, because it's like a ritual sort of thing that I'm like the center focus of, and that makes me super super uncomfortable. Like even if I were the same religion, I think I would feel really uncomfortable in that situation.
Yeah, that's weird. Like, what?
Like if you want to have nice thoughts for me, you go ahead and have nice thoughts for me. I don't need to hear them being enacted in real time, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, yeah. I'd feel weird too. I mean,
And like forming this like coven circle around me.
hmm.
Uh,
I mean, if they declare you a god or something like that, you could be like David Koresh and like have your own cult. Why not?
the
Uh,
Picard.
yeah, yeah. Ooh, that as an introvert, like that would get me
Mm-hmm.
kind of wigged out. Like I'd feel a little bit sketched out by that. I mean, some people thrive on that,
Yeah,
and
and
those people become politicians.
yeah,
But
and they mean well.
yeah,
And you know, he knew I was an atheist, so it's not like, you know, we were good friends and stuff. So I wasn't taking it as like an intentional slight necessarily, or anything, you know, I was gonna end the friendship over by any means. But
no, and that's an important thing. Like you have
right,
to take it in context. Like, what is the intent of
yeah,
a thing? Like, what are people intending to do? Um, I mean,
yeah,
if they wish for good, like maybe you could like suck it up for a minute and just deal with the discomfort.
right.
Um,
I mean, like I strive to not be a hypocrite wherever possible. So I equate this to you know, the whole situation where you might call a transgender person by the wrong pronoun, right?
mhm.
And they feel slighted and they correct you, and at that point you have a choice. You start calling them by the pronoun that they choose, or you know, you at least strive to remember to and apologize if you trip up, or you can be a dick and, you know, refuse to. Um, that's where I kind of start lumping in some of these people. Like if you continually tell me you're praying for me long after you know I'm an atheist, like maybe consider how that's making me feel. You know, like even if I'm taking it
Yeah,
in stride, like there are probably some people that might be a little more sensitive to that than me. And I feel like, you know, if you're going to be compassionate, a compassionate person, that's something that you really have to consider.
that's a really good point. Yeah.
Not that the plight of an atheist equates to the plight of a transgender person. I'm just, you know, like a
Well,
principle.
it could. I mean, it depends on
I mean, there's
where you
similarities.
are in the world and
Yeah,
cultural norms and stuff
you
like
can
that.
be put to death in the Middle East for being an atheist.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and here in Tennessee, I can't, you know, I was thinking of running for governor back in Washington. I can't run for public office in Tennessee because I'm an
Huh.
atheist. And
What?
I'm on public record for being so, you know, here on the YouTube
So
show. So there's, and my book. So like, there's no
wait,
getting around it.
wait. There's a prerequisite that you have to be religious.
Yep, it's in the state constitution, which is unconstitutional federally and could be challenged as such.
Uh,
But I don't think anyone has yet. So, I mean, if I
hmm.
live here for 7 years and I decide to run for governor, I might raise a stink about that. But
Yeah, that's a little bit weird. Like, I mean, granted, the whole separation of church and state isn't constitutional, um, but it should be. Like,
it really should, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, well, it is kind of though.
Well,
The
the
First
First
Amendment.
Amendment, yeah, kind of, yeah, it does kind of set a precedent.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like no, rules
Congress shall make no law respecting
the establishment
religion,
of
and
religion. Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean that can easily translate to. I mean, I guess it's because it's old speak. It's just as debatable as the Second Amendment, which is why I'm currently drafting a new form of government. By the way, um,
nice. All right. Well, that'll be the next episode we'll talk about. Yeah, I think like the First Amendment, the sticky wicket is Congress, because it leaves it open to the states. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like back then, the states were like sovereign territories, and
yeah,
I don't know.
we don't really need that anymore. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but we could easily do away with borders and be just fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Back to the topic at hand.
it's amazing the tangents we go off on.
I know.
Talking about religion, and then all of a sudden we're talking about the state of government.
Yeah. Ooh, it's in quite a state. More beer.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so, what was the flip side of that though? You were mentioning like um, the flip side of like praying for an atheist. Weren't you saying something like, do you think an atheist should pray for a religious person if
Yeah.
a loved one or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. Like if somebody is deeply religious,
Mm-hmm.
is it wrong as an atheist to pray for them, even if you're not really, even if it's like disingenuous, like you're not really committed to it, but
Well,
you're praying just because this person feels so strongly about it and you want them to feel better.
that's what I was gonna say. Is like if they knew I was an atheist, I think they'd be able to like smell the bullshit, and I don't know that would really be the kindest thing to do.
Although, in fact,
When you can alternatively say like I'm keeping you in my thoughts and have just as much, like
oh, sure,
just
but
as much intent at least.
imagine if you're a religious person, like from their perspective, imagine if an atheist was praying for you. Like, wouldn't that be like so much more powerful than somebody who is actually religious praying for you? Because you're obliged to pray for people if you're religious.
Right, but
But
I mean
as an atheist, you don't have to. You're under no obligation to do anything.
I mean,
Um,
okay, if it's a stranger that like I met on the street and they're like, "Oh my god, I'm dying of cancer. Can you spare $5?" I might throw them a five and be like, "Hey, I'm praying for you," or whatever.
yeah.
If they've got crosses all over their cardboard sign or whatever, like, and they wouldn't know different, right? But if it's someone I know, like I'd really have to sell that shit if I was trying to convince them of, like, hey, look at me, I've converted for your cause. Like it would have to be like a whole dog and pony show. Like,
Well, you don't have to convert. Um, all you have to do is participate and pray for that person. Like that to me is like, I
I
mean,
guess.
okay, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it feels so much more powerful for
I feel
somebody
like
who doesn't have any skin in the game to pray for somebody. You're an atheist, now you're praying with somebody who's deeply religious. Like that seems very meaningful.
yeah. I mean, I could see how it could be, but I feel like you're dancing on a razor's edge with that because it could also easily be taken wrong.
That's true, and it depends on the person, like
Yeah.
their own particular interpretation of things and stuff.
Well, so like I mentioned, my friend that died a few years ago, when I put out a Facebook post or whatever, like hey, I know this isn't my thing, but I'm asking for prayers for my friend. He was really touched by that. It
Mm.
wasn't me praying. I didn't say, hey, I'm praying for you, bro. But he was still really moved by the gesture. And so
Yeah.
I think in that case, I think that's the avenue to take as an atheist is like, hey, this isn't my thing, but I will gladly ask other people to pray for you.
Well, and that's super meaningful. Yeah, because in the deeply religious corners, um, atheists are seen as some kind of like heathens, like, oh,
Yeah.
they don't care about anybody, they're godless or something like that. And it's like, if you call upon people who are religious to pray for somebody as an atheist, like that is like I said, it's more meaningful than somebody who's religious praying for somebody, because
Yeah.
well, that's what you do.
Well,
But
yeah,
if you do what you don't do, because you care about somebody, that's a huge deal.
yeah. I think it showed him that, like I genuinely care for him as a friend enough to disregard our differences in opinion and not try to further my own agenda in the whole thing, and or compromise who I am in a deceptive way to make him feel better. Like
Hmm.
he saw that I was being true to myself and also being respectful of what he believes, and thoughtful enough to think about what he would want and stuff. So
Yeah.
like I think that's the right road to take as an atheist who has a religious person going through a hard time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
although it is something that's personal, like it depends on where you stand in the spectrum. Um, but yeah, yeah.
sure, yeah. um in my mom's case, I'm sure she would actually be really overjoyed if I said I was praying for her, and she probably might not even see through the bullshit. But I would know, you know,
Yeah.
I would feel dirty about it. Um,
Well, and as somebody who's an atheist but spiritual, I could pray for somebody, but I wouldn't be praying to God or anything like that. It would be more like I'm sending energy, like trying at least. So yeah, I mean, there's different ways of doing things and seeing things. Um, yeah.
yeah,
Oh man.
I think like you touched on, a lot of people see atheists as like devil worshipping heathens and
Yeah.
wrongdoers and stuff, but like for the most part, they tend to be very compassionate, well-meaning, at least
Hmm.
well-meaning people. Um, there are some circles of atheists that are, you know, basically take it as a religion and are dicks in their own special way. But
Yeah,
uh,
like bent on destroying religions and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that the ultimate goal everyone should really just have is to just be thoughtful and compassionate and caring,
Mhm.
and express that in whatever way you know best. Um,
Yeah.
whatever is going to come off as being as genuine as you intend it to be. You shouldn't really try to like uh, fit every mold the way you think they're expecting it to be. You might be surprised at how they are receptive to you just being genuine.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think if you're trying to adhere to somebody else's doctrine or philosophy or something, I think that's the wrong way to go. Just be yourself and be respectful. Yeah, I people appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's oh man, that this is actually like a pretty good conversation. I had no idea we were going
Yeah.
to talk about this.
Yeah, it seems like when we do an episode that's kind of like based around family, it always ends up being like a super deep, emotional, meaningful conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this will probably rank among one of our greatest. It'll
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
I'd like to hear other people's stories about this kind of thing. Like if you're an atheist or religious or whatever, and you've had to deal with this kind of thing, like yeah,
Yeah, I
I want
mean,
to hear
like,
people's stories.
I would hope that this sort of uh, thinking could be more prevalent in today's society. You know, like on both sides, like atheists being okay, like a little more comfortable about prayer, being a little more genuine in their answers about, like, you know, expressing their care for a sick person or someone going through a hard time or whatever. And on the flip side, like recognizing that atheists aren't born without morals or whatever, like just dropping these preconceived notions and just looking at people's intent, because I'm
Yes,
big on intent. Everyone says impact is greater than intent, and that's bullshit,
I
because
agree.
like your impact is all based on your perception, and
Mm-hmm.
the other person has no control whatsoever on your perception. You have to look, you have to listen, not just to their words. You have to listen to their inflection. You have to listen to their, like, can you tell if they're genuine? Is their body language genuine? Like, are they feeling like they're out of their comfort zone? Because that's probably a good indication that they're really trying to, go out of their way to make you feel comfortable. Like, people just, because it's a little harder to recognize intent, people are like, well, let's say fuck intent and just focus on how it makes me feel.
Well, yeah, exactly, and
That's selfish.
even I think the it's harmful to the whole like binary thing. Like you're either an atheist or you're religious, and it's like, well, what about religious people? Let's take that and compare and contrast all of them, all the religious people. Like, what do you only want Christians to pray for you, or Muslims, or whatever? Like, I don't care who's praying for me. I honestly, like, it but it feels so, it's like creating artificial divisions. um
Imagine what a world this would be if people were more receptive to Muslims praying for them, or
yeah,
uh, Sikhs, or whatever. Like,
Jews or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
like so many people like have these horrible misconceptions and these like cultural, like, bigoted thoughts about how, like, Sikhs are just extremist Muslims, when nothing could be further from the truth.
No, no. The thing is, like, the Sikhs and the Muslims are like diehard enemies. Like, I how uh, um yeah, if you're a Christian, you want to make friends with the Sikhs. Just saying. Um,
Yeah, they're really nice.
oh, they're awesome people. Like,
I
and
would actually, we haven't really like done a religion interview in a long time.
mhm.
I would love to interview somebody from the Sikh faith, because yes, I am drinking out of a growler.
That is a huge beer. Yeah.
I drank most of it last night when I found out my mom had cancer, so it's not that much.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we should. I would absolutely love to talk to a Sikh, because yeah, yeah, well, it's a complete uh divergence from
yeah,
Yeah.
But I mean, it really fits with what we're talking about at the moment, because people really need to listen to other ideas, look at their intent, and find the similarities. You know, like there's a lot in common between Sikhs and atheists. There's a
Or
lot in common
Muslims
between,
and Jews and Christians. Like,
yeah, Sikhs and
I,
Christians. They have more in
yeah.
common than they even realize. You know, and
Well, here's the thing: the powers that be don't want us to get along. They want us to fight,
mm,
because at that point we're more easily manipulated. But I think that's a pretty good point to kind of wrap things up on. Um,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, this is like great idea. Oh man. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah. I hope your mom does well, like is doing okay.
yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily want to make this into like a scientific experiment sort of episode, because like by the time it airs, the surgery will have happened. I don't know yet whether or not she makes it.
Hmm.
But there's prayers flying around from people I work with that, you know, here in Tennessee. Obviously, I've never met her, and I've conveyed that to her, and it made her feel better. Um,
And that's really cool. Like somebody you've never met is giving you love. Like that's pretty cool. Like
yeah,
that's the good side of Christianity.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's doing the right thing. Like showing love for somebody that someone you love loves
Mm-hmm.
is the right thing to do. And I mean, if you really extend that out, you should just really be nice and loving to everybody, because we're all connected. You know?
That's true. Oh man. Yeah. We're all humans.
But that's coming from a devil worshipping, godless, heathen atheist. Take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
Oh man.
And a drunkard, apparently. Looking like I'm drinking hooch here.
that is a huge ass beer.
Welcome to Tennessee.
Tennessee. Um, man, that's probably a good point to end on. I mean, we're coming up on like an hour.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear other people's ideas about the things we've talked about. You know, your whatever side you stand on, if you're religious or atheist or something. Like, what do you think about the prayer side of things? Like, would you pray for somebody? If you're an atheist, would you accept prayer from an atheist?
Well, here's a cool idea. If somebody watching the show has had an experience where they felt very strongly that they had a miracle or some prayer answered, right? And you want to come on and see if you can convince an atheist that a miracle occurred or a prayer was answered.
Ooh.
And you're willing to hear the cold, logical, scientific angle of things. Like that would be an interesting.
Yeah, that'd be good. And I'll moderate because I'm kind of a little bit of a spiritualist. Like I like the woo stuff. And yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
So yeah, like throw your experiences in the comments. Maybe we should put something up on the website too.
Yeah.
That's a good spot to go. You know, we have the occasional post on there that you can chime in on, and sometimes it has something to do with the show. Sometimes it doesn't. You know. And yeah, thanks for deep sink diving with us into prayer and
Death.
other ethereal things.
Yeah. Ooh, man.
Limitations of the human body.
Ooh. All right. Well, on that, Have a good night, everybody.